Case Study on Parental Apathy, EDL 856, Lindsay Sellers. First, problem identification and analysis. What do we know about the case? The first point that I wanted to point out was that Mrs. Rose wants to have more parental involvement and parental support throughout the school. She sees that this is lacking in the school and has brought this up to the principal. The principal is not in favor necessarily of promoting and being involved with the school in regards to parents having some of that say, and it appears that maybe he has some frustration from things that he's experienced in the past. There is indeed lack of parental involvement. Currently, there appear to be no programs for parent or community involvement. The principal claims that he has tried in the past to get parents involved, but this has not been successful. And the principal doesn't necessarily see a need to change this. And Mrs. Rose maybe is feeling a little bit different about that being new to the school. So what things are we needing to know? What programs are in place? Are there any that have been in place or maybe are just a starting point? How is that program functioning? Who's involved with that, and maybe what's gone on with that in the past would be important information. What attempts for parental involvement have been made in the past? Were these attempts unsuccessful? Have they tried anything? More kind of about maybe some of the background of that. What barriers are preventing parents from coming to the school to be involved? As I looked at this, I really looked at what are the needs within the community as well. Is it maybe the time that the meetings are being held? Is transportation an issue for these parents and families? Childcare, are there young kids or elementary age kids that need to be taken care of during this time? And how are the parents and the community feeling? What's the perception of the school? Another thing would be, how is the school promoted within the community? Does the school just keep to itself, or does it really try to get involved and hold community events back and forth? And then how is the school currently working to reach parents? Obviously, it's noted that they've sent letters home with students, but how else are parents being reached and communicated with? And then lastly, what are some of the parents' perceptions of being involved within the school? Are they willing? Do they feel like maybe they have tried before and have gotten turned down? So all of those things about kind of that back and forth flow that kids do every day from home to school. What's that communication looking like between the parents and the school? What's that back and forth flow looking like? So really down to the problem identification here. It appears that maybe parents are not connected to the school. There's something missing with that. The administration has yet to find an effective way to connect with parents with their current population. Maybe things that happened with parents 5 years ago and the population of students they had 5 years ago is different than what's going on right now. And then the limited communication between home and school. It appears that the administration has a way to communicate with home, but they maybe are limiting that. So maybe broadening, looking at that as a problem and maybe needing to look at that a little bit different, broadening some of those methods. The plan of action and strategies, action steps. So first, analyze what the current plan is and build off what is working and maybe look to scrap what is not working. So start at that starting point of what is working. Let's maybe rework what's not. Secondly, probably some type of survey or way to connect with parents to really get a feel for what they're needing. That might also be true that you might need to do that with teachers, with office staff, with board members, and really try to see how they're perceiving the school from the outside in. I think the third step would be to maybe get a teacher committee going. It would appear that possibly there are the teachers are struggling. If you have good teacher communication back and forth with home and school, then I think that probably would extend throughout the entire school. So I think a teacher committee to work on ways to connect with parents would be a definite action step that would need to take place with the new assistant principal as well as guidance from the principal. I think that fourth, and this may come through the committee, to look at ways to reach more parents. The methods of communication need to probably be broadened. Social media, sending postcards or flyers through the mail so that you know they're actually getting to every household. Advertising things on the website. If there's extra office staff or teachers, each person makes 5 calls home. And maybe some type of meet and greet or open house. Another thought in reaching parents would be maybe a community meeting, maybe at a neutral site. Go to the park, a local church if there's a big one in town, maybe the local library, some type of neutral group setting. Another thought would be home visits. Do there need to be more home visits happening to really make those connections between home and school? And then lastly, redesigning community programming. This could be everything from open houses to the way the school is used and the facilities are used throughout the community. Strategies to implement, requiring staff involvement. This would probably take some professional development. That doesn't necessarily mean that all the staff has to be involved on the same level. But just requiring that somehow we start getting staff involved with parent communication. Obviously, then analyzing the parent surveys that would be getting out, look at what they're saying is and isn't working for parents, and then take that advice and have the committee work on some of the implementation pieces of that. Obviously, like I mentioned, redoing the methods of communication, using more than just a note home in the backpack. What are other ways we can get this out? What are other ways we can reach people? And then lastly, another strategy would maybe be to look at the overall school climate. Finding ways to implement new ideas with positive behavior supports, maybe, a breakfast club or different ways of maybe helping school climate. And then once I think school climate itself starts to increase, then you start to see parents having more information and being more comfortable with the way communication is happening with their students as well. Getting parents involved at school events, providing incentives, come to the, a free hot dog feed before the football game. Really trying to get maybe parents involved in things that they're already coming to, but you can get information out that way as well. Promoting student success. So what is best for students? And I just went down this list and I thought this was a nice way to actually present them. Students need parents that are involved in their school. Students need a school that has parental input. Students need a school that has a supportive community. Students need caring staff that have open lines of communication. Students need sustainable parent-supported programs within their school. And students need a school with supportive leaders. And I think this was the best way just to go down and say, these are the things that students need. And once all of these things are in place, you're doing what's best for students. So not only getting that input and involvement, knowing that the community has their back, having those open lines of communication with programs throughout the school really is what's best for students. So some resolutions based on data, update the way that communication with parents is done. In this particular case study, this could even be taken on by Mrs. Rose. Maybe she could be the kind of keeper, the gatekeeper of social media, using the school website, advertisements, etc. Use the teacher leadership team. Get a team of teachers from across different different areas and really have them be part of the resolution, have them come up with ideas. Possibly, it was mentioned in the case that parent-teacher conferences maybe didn't have great turnouts. What about a reformat? An idea would be college and career readiness, where maybe you don't necessarily talk as much about student performance as you do about where are your students going, what kind of skills do they need to be prepared for the future. Another option here would be hold a job fair. If the parent comes to meet with the teachers, what kind of community fair or job fair could possibly be had to get people in the door. I do think that the principal needs to come around to having some type of organized parental advisory board. It did say he was not open to a PTO or a PTA, but maybe what about a site council or advisory board that parents get input on? Some type of way to have parent information coming in. I think also openness to new and change. It sounds like, there's some frustrations with the principal. The nice thing about a new administrator is maybe that person has different experiences and can bring different ideas to the table. So let Mrs. Rose bring some of the fresh ideas and run with those. And then lastly, I think it would be extremely important for professional development, not only for the administration to look into, but also the staff. So I would say professional development sessions in regards specifically to parental and community involvement. But this could also be consulting or visiting other school districts with schools similar to the one that they're in. Looking at what other people are doing. Teachers can be the best stealers of ideas, so really use what other districts are possibly doing. Look at other schools around and see what's working for them. Some resolution-based data. The PBIS model for positive behavior support, as most of you know, uses an 80-15-5 kind of intervention type systems, and so I would say that this would be what you would want the goal to be for parental involvement. Now, starting with this situation, that might be a long shot, but essentially, as a model, what you would want 80% of your parents naturally involved with the school, however that looked, whatever the district thought that should look like. Then you should be doing something for that kind of middle 15% that you feel like you really need the parental support of those students, but you're just not getting it. And the 5% would probably be some one-on-one, more intensive support to reach out to those parents and really get those last 5% involved. So I thought this was just a way to maybe look at parental involvement, sometimes how we look at data on students and where students are with behavior and academic successes. So, reflections with how I was thinking and feeling and what I was valuing. This case study kind of does hit a little bit of a nerve as you think, as you're reading it, oh my, this school needs help, and what could I do, or what would I do to turn the apathy maybe that you felt a little bit by the principal around. Brainstorming. I think that was, as I was reading, what I was probably doing throughout was brainstorming and trying to think, like, let's help these people learn new ways to get parents involved and show them that they could really be an integral part of their school. Build on the newness and the motivation, the momentum that Mrs. Rose is bringing in. Build from the bottom up. And then lastly, the debate on if they should hold the parent meeting with only 8 parents. Go ahead and get their input. Unresolved issues and further investigation would be, why is the principal kind of in shutdown mode on the ideas of connecting with parents? What can be done to get more parents involved? Like I mentioned before, the professional development I think would be a big thing, and then setting some goals to increase parental involvement, kind of using that 15 or that 5-15-80 model. And lastly, at the end of the day, the most overwhelming key to a child's success is involvement of the parents.